All right, well, I think we can go ahead and get started. Well, welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Local Search Expert Series, How to Maximize Multi-Location Success with Google Reviews and Profiles. We have an awesome agenda lined up. We're going to be covering everything that you need to know to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success with your Google Business Profiles, with your reviews. But even beyond that, we're going to talk about your online reputation. We're going to talk about how you can make managing all of this stuff a lot easier, whether you have one location or 500. The tips and the strategies and the things we're going to discuss can apply to everybody. And so we're gonna have a really good time. And before I introduce our guest speaker here, who's joining me right now, let's knock out some of the housekeeping items and get that out of the way. First, it looks like everybody here has found the chat section, which is great. And during this webinar, we would love for you guys to continue to participate in the chat. We're going to be answering questions. We're going to listen. We want to hear your ideas, your thoughts. Maybe if you're experiencing specific challenges or anything like that, or you want to offer your insight or experience, we would love to hear from you. We want to make this very interactive. We don't want to just listen to me and Ben talk back and forth for an hour. We want to really get involved with what you guys are dealing with out there. And so the chat section is there. If you have more of like a formal question, you can always put that in the Q&A section as well. We'll be reading both. And if you look in between the chat section and the Q&A, there should be something that says Docs. And in that Docs tab, there's a bunch of different reports and guides and blogs and things like that, where we have provided some additional materials and some of our research from Birdeye, where we've taken some surveys and we've run some analytics on what people's current status is with their reviews and their business profiles, and some helpful guides and things like that. And then lastly, the last one on that Docs tab is to follow us on LinkedIn at Birdeye. We've got an awesome social media presence where we really focus on providing helpful information. So if you follow us on LinkedIn, it won't be just a bunch of promotional posts and whatnot. It'll be like helpful tips and strategies and things like that. So definitely be sure to do that. And then lastly, if you can also connect with Ben and I on LinkedIn as well. But if you're not going to be able to stay for the whole hour, don't worry. You will get a link to the recording. I'm pretty sure in a few hours after this recording is processed, you could use the same link that you used to join to watch the recording. But in any case, you'll be getting another email, an automated email tomorrow around this time that includes a link. So you should be good to go. But let's go ahead and get started, and let me introduce today's guest speaker. This is not his first time on the Local Search Expert Series. I believe you were part of the first episode of this series.
Yeah, it was the first. I was on the first one. Yeah,
maybe. Yeah. Well, please join me in welcoming Ben Fisher. Ben is the co-founder and the lead consultant at Steady Demand. He is a Google Business Profile Diamond Product Expert. If that's that, or is he what's the correct order of that? Is it Diamond Google Business Profile Product Expert? Is that the correct?
It's Google Business Diamond. Wait. Actually, hold on. How do we say it these days? No, it's fine that way. You could just say Google Business Profile Product Expert and just be good.
Yes, yeah. That works for me. And you've got 25 years of experience in online marketing. You're kind of a legend in the game when it comes to SEO and Google, really. You've contributed to the annual local ranking factor study. You've just recently been featured in Forbes as well for your expertise and insights. And so welcome, Ben. Thank you so much for joining us again. It's great to see you again, and I'm excited for today's discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. And yeah, that was kind of fun being interviewed by Forbes for all the stuff we're going to be talking about today, actually, about local services ads and the changes that have been happening there. And yeah, I mean, our agency, obviously, we focus a lot on Google Business Profiles, but we do pretty much end-to-end kind of local SEO agency, except for pay-per-click. I refuse to do pay-per-click, and and we really specialize in working with franchises and multi-location businesses, and kind of helping the different types of challenges that exist there, especially when it comes to GBP, LSA, heck, bulk verification, making guidelines so your franchisees and your store managers don't go crazy. Well, don't drive you crazy, I should say. Things like that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's jump right in. And, I think a great place to start is to get an understanding of the current landscape of Google, business profiles, reviews. Let's try to get an understanding and for the people tuning in, what's going on right now, with where we're at. So when it comes to your business profiles and reviews, what are some of the latest updates and things that you're seeing?
Well, we have a lot to talk about, Justin, so I hope you're not going to get bored too quick. All right, so when we're talking about your Google business profile, the biggest thing that's happening right now that you need to be aware of is that if you have been suspended, or a location or profile has been suspended, now more often than not, when it gets reinstated, your reviews can be missing completely. And actually it can be pretty tough to get those reviews back. And also, more importantly, if you get to a certain point where you've been suspended, you can't get back on for whatever reason. You do your multiple appeals, etc. You make a new one and you try to move reviews from your suspended location to your new location. This is not working very well either. It's literally a coin toss at this point. That's personally the big one for me. And I think for a lot of businesses, because we work really hard to get those reviews. Mm-hmm. And I had a restaurant the other day that lost literally thousands of reviews.
Wow.
And Google just said, yeah, they're gone. We can't get them.
Yeah. And as we'll talk about shortly, that is a big impact. Your reviews do, carry, a lot of importance.
Absolutely.
So that's not an easy thing to lose.
Yep. The other things that kind of are happening here too is like the review filter, which functions when you get a new review, or kind of sometimes within 24 hours of getting a bunch of reviews, things like that. It's extremely active. So the filtering of reviews has kind of been dialed up. I feel like we're starting to see this at the end of almost every year, actually. I have a feeling that the questions and answer feature may be deprecated for your Google business profile. I'm not saying don't pay attention to it for right now. Just be prepared that it might actually go away. And the reason is that we're starting to see some tests. The two tests that I find interesting that I think are actually going to stick around this time is the first one's the badge of shame. And it's kind of similar to your... It depends, Wallace. I'll get to that question in a second, I guess. But so the badge of shame is basically kind of like what you see on Yelp when Yelp decides that there may be a bunch of fake reviews that are incoming. And they put this thing up saying, reviews may be fake. Well, we've been seeing tests of this out in the EU. And, so usually if it happens in the EU, it is going to happen in the United States. Same thing like with India to EU to United States. And so we've been seeing this kind of badge show up, basically saying that, hey, this profile may have gotten fake reviews. And it's pretty bold. It's up there. It's kind of right where the editorial description goes. So that can be pretty bad. That could be detrimental, of course, to your sales. So you're going to have to watch out for that. And there's going to be a lot of false positives there too. So we're going to kind of need to teach support. And the other thing is talking about summaries, is they're testing AI summaries. AI summaries is kind of looking like they're going to be able to give editorial summaries to almost any business, because I've seen it on like HVAC companies and plumbers. Usually it's something handwritten by Google. This is just obviously created by AI, and it's looking pretty darn good. So even if you're not a chain, you'll be able to get the editorial summary. That's the big stuff really for your GBP at the moment. When do you want to talk about LSA, Justin?
Yeah, well, based on some of the questions we have, I think, is that question from Mary about they've been tracking their reviews and have noticed that quite a few of their locations have had more 5-star reviews.
Yeah.
just disappear. Is that part of
This
the
is
active
normal.
filters?
Yeah. This is part of the active filtering. So active filtering can happen in two ways. Number one is I'm leaving you a review. I can see the review. You can't. So that's a filter, right? But that's usually a filter on the user, sometimes the business. This other one is when you go to sleep, you had 100 reviews last night. You wake up and you've got 90. That's missing existing reviews, which is completely different. Well, I'm sorry, it's very much the same, in the way that they're going away. I guess it is the filter. There is a way that you can attempt to get them back, and that is if you have the reviews in a very, very, very specific format, to give basically Google and say, hey, here's the reviews I've gotten. Where are they? And then they have to go look them up and find them in the Maps database, and then they might be able to restore them to your GBP. That's the basics of it. But you can, there is hope.
Okay. So let's dig into local service ads. When we were discussing this yesterday during our kind of pre-webinar meeting, this was a big topic. What is kind of happening when it comes to those right now?
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess I'll start by asking the audience here a quick question. How many of you all are using local services ads?
That was that was my next question too for the audiences. Yeah.
It is. Okay.
Yeah, looks like.
Yep. So it's Ty, Jennifer, Carol. Okay. Tyler, Rob. Okay. Cool. Sherry. Not yet. Okay. Sarah. Darren's not. Okay. Thomas isn't. All right. No. All right. Okay. I think the eyes do have it though. All right. So a follow-up question to that is those of you who are using LSA, how many find it to be the most wonderful experience in the entire world? No. No. So. No. All right. Well, unfortunately, what I'm here to tell you today is not going to make you feel much better. But it is going to get you kind of prepared. God, we got so many questions. No Google experience is a wonderful experience. So true. So true. Almost no leads. Justin, we need to do an LSA webinar. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we
Man.
might need to.
Jesus. There's a lot of people here suffering some normal experiences here.
Yeah, we're a support group.
Exactly, right? Okay. So let's get down to it. So here are the things that basically are happening in the LSA world. Like Justin said, I was actually recently interviewed about Forbes about this. That's kind of how important this story is. So basically, the first thing that you're going to find out is that all of your reviews are going to now reside in your Google business profile. No longer are they going to exist in your local service ads as the verified review. Now, what we understand is, and this is not confirmed, is that the LSA verified reviews will go into your Google business profile and then they'll basically stay there. I expect that the review filter is going to kind of go crazy at this point and start taking out a bunch of those verified reviews, which, to be honest with you, in many circumstances, that's actually, I think, a good thing, simply because of the amount of spam that we've seen inside of LSA. And if you're in that kind of category, you probably know exactly what I mean. The next thing is that the address and the name of the GBP and the LSA must match almost near exactly, I should say, because there are some exceptions to that. If not, like let's say you're doing an address change, for instance, then your LSA will be suspended. The next thing is that the same email address that is on your Google business profile, say managing or the owner, must also exist on your LSA account and your Google AdWords account that is connected to the LSA. If this is not true, you guessed it, your LSA will then be suspended. And I'm going to touch back on this email thing. I mean, yeah, well, here's a challenge, I guess, that franchises and enterprises have with this problem specifically, at least that we see, is that for the most part, franchisee may not know the email address which is being associated usually with their LSA or maybe their AdWords account. They know it for their Google Business Profile usually, but LSA has been set up so long ago, or maybe it was set up by somebody else. And that comes to another issue. A lot of franchises will have, agencies basically that, either they have 100% control of these assets. They may even put it in their agreements with you that they control these assets if you ever decide to cancel an account. You may have created them, or I'm sorry, the agency may have created them. Then you may have fired that agency, or the franchisee or the location may have fired that agency, and they just turned it off basically. But there might still be a balance on the AdWords account, and the fact is the other account's still out there. You don't know it. Go to create a new one. Now it's flagged as duplicate. It's never going to go live. So other agencies is a very large issue that we see. Not having an MCC, the My Client Center. I see that all the time. And if you don't have these kinds of things, by the way, you can't get this email to line up with your GBP and your LSA, because if you have an MCC, it makes it really easy. Add in one place, boom, you're done. Not having a direct contact at Google, that's a big deal. It really surprises me when I walk into, a 300 unit franchise and they're like, no, we really don't have a direct contact at Google for anything like this. Come on, with the amount of spending you got, you're going to at least get a level 1 or a level 2 rep. So you can do it. You just have to apply for it in a sense. AdWords is not going to usually be able to help with this scenario, by the way. And again, the franchise is, going rogue and trying to create new accounts. These are all kind of issues. But the problem is that if you can't figure this out, and if you can't figure it out fast, then your LSAs start going down. And you should know how much that represents as far as a potential risk or / loss. And so, unfortunately, there's not a lot of time for this. I think in January, I believe, is the deadline for it. November 21st, actually. Well, today, yay. Today was the last day to get your Google Business Profile connected to your GBP. Your LSA. And I've already started seeing instances where people are creating new GBPs because that's what the LSA workflow says to do, and which is actually the incorrect thing, by the way. So if you see that, don't do it. Okay, please don't do it. And then, so basically, then after that, the last thing is that if you are suspended on your Google Business Profile or you have to go through re-verification, this will also suspend the leads which are in your LSA. So it will stop providing leads. And when I mean suspension, I'm just talking, by the way, a pause. So it's not like you have to appeal it or anything like that. But these are all pretty important things that they kind of happen on a regular basis. And the big news there is, of course, is now GBP is completely the source of truth.
Okay. That's very helpful. I think there's, one follow-up question I have. When you said that today is the last day to connect your GBP with LSA, is that, do you know if the folks here tuning in can do that today still, or was yesterday the last day? And
when I say today is the day, is that's what they put in their newsletter, right? That's what Google said. I have a hunch they're going to allow this to kind of slip and slide until mid-January, until everybody's kind of had a good chance. So when I say today's the last day, that's their published last day. You're welcome, Dustin. And so, but again, it's not a situation that you should rush out and fix, right? It's a situation that you need to step back and really carefully look at the kind of what's going on and what you have, what your assets are, do an audit basically of it, and do it slowly. Because again, if you follow some of the messaging that Google puts out in their workflows, it'll tell you to do the wrong thing. It'll tell you like create a new LSA. It'll tell you create a new GBP, which makes a duplicate, which means you lose all your reviews. There are going to be all sorts of little things that can happen. So you just need to be really, really, really slow about it. And we are getting tons of questions here. Wow. You tell me where you want to start, buddy.
Let's take a couple of these. Before we jump into the next section about the search engines, let's take is with the to connect your GPP to your LSA. Is there like a workflow or a link? On the Google support.
Okay. I don't know. There probably is, and I could probably dig it up if you really want me to, really quick.
Let me see if we can.
I can tell you, it's in the info section basically. And then it's
I'll see someone on the back end can find it. Oh, looks like we lost Ben. Well, while he rejoins, I'm going to see if the people on the back end can help find that support link. We lost him. Oh, he's back. Okay. Let's see here. So we've got.
I'm assuming I froze up there, Justin.
Just for a second. You didn't cut. You just cut out and then came back in. It was not bad. Okay. Let's see. We've got that. So while we're finding that link, let's go ahead and move on to this next section. And recently there's been some new players entering the space, particularly Perplexity and OpenAI with their ChatGPT search feature.
Sure. Yeah.
What role do you think they're going to play in this next coming year? I've used both a pretty fair amount, and I've really, really liked them. And I've started to use them a lot myself. What's your thought on this, and how are you, how are you using these tools, if you are?
If I am, come on, we only do an entire AI series. Now I only use it a little bit. So I surprised myself. I mean, I've been using these LLMs, of course, since they were publicly available. And but once ChatGPT launched the Mac desktop app, my search behavior changed immediately. It wasn't a thoughtful move. It just happened. And I think that's actually the problem, and that's what we all kind of need to look at, or not problem, maybe even opportunity. And that is that now I go to ChatGPT for my searches. The only time I'm going to Google is to look up something on Google Maps for my client or something like that. Because I do want that one answer. And so I don't know if that's what other people's behavior is like. I'd probably say,
let us know.
Probably say,
let us know if you're using ChatGPT search or Perplexity in the chat. Looks like Dustin is using Perplexity. The ChatGPT search is brand new. Yeah, but I've noticed my own search behavior started switching, especially for informational searches. Now it's more, Google's more of my browser to get to Perplexity or to get to Gmail or things, more of just like a portal for the internet, more so than like a search engine.
Right. And why we need to think about this behavior is because, we can start taking a look at the kind of what the trend is going to be. And if the trend is going to be more upwards towards people utilizing, these different types of answer engines, versus something like Google, then we need to start thinking about, well, what are we going to do to market to these things? What are we going to do to surface when somebody puts in the informational query? It's like I did one the other day. I looked for a search on, just to search on reinstate a Google business profile, right? And yay, I had 2 links in the AIO. Woo! You know?
Nice.
So one was a YouTube and another was actually a local marketing institute. So yeah, so it was nice. It was great, right? So I'm like, all right. And it kind of reinforces that if you do regular SEO, it kind of works. But as these things get more and more complex, as the tail gets even longer, which it will, we're going to need to start to understand and pay attention to how to get ourselves included in these answers, basically, or get left behind. And so that kind of comes to another thing about like with this, and that is we every time we have one of these webinars, we talk about controlling the narrative. And controlling the narrative has kind of always been something that's been important. But now when it comes to, things like ChatGPT and Perplexity, controlling your narrative gets even more important. Looking at what people are saying, and when I'm talking about what people, I mean, I'm talking about the crowd. I'm talking about multiple websites. What are they saying? Because the fact of the matter is that let's say you're 10, your business is 10 years old, but I get more than enough people to go out there and say, nope, your business is actually 5 years old. This is when you started. And I get to overwrite maybe one of your original documents somewhere that you put out a press release. And I get them to go ahead and correct that. How much of the narrative can I change about your entity? And, and on the flip side of that, how much can you control that information? Because if enough sources say something, then these LLMs, these new search engines, answer engines, that's what they're going to come up with as the answer. So you need to be able to feed it and control that feed, basically, I guess is my point there. So reputation management just got really important, like really important.
Yeah, it's and I think that's a great segue into our next piece is that, even though there are these new players coming in, your online reputation, especially on Google, is still absolutely vital. I mean, especially as it relates to your Google Maps and, making it easy for people to find you. Like I think you were telling me yesterday that if you don't have a business profile, you won't show up on Google Maps. And
Right.
that's a very, an important thing to do. And people will be, when I'm looking for, for me, most of the time when I'm looking for a local business, whether it's a restaurant, a service, a dentist, it's normally in Google Maps because I want to see it in the map and see where it is in relation to me. And then I look at their business profile, the reviews and everything like that pops up. So let's talk a little bit more about the impact of that. And, if you let's in this first scenario, let's say if you had 3 businesses, one with a built out GPP with photos and reviews and everything else, one with a GPP, but it's not really built out. They have it set up so that it does technically show up on maps, but it's when you look at it, it's kind of bare bones. And then, versus a business without it. What would their search rankings be? How would they differ? What would kind of the impact of each of these kind of levels of optimization,
Sure.
result in?
So it's a pretty easy, actually, explanation on the answer here. I guess you could have here, and that is that, believe it or not, a bare bones profile, like we're talking brand new, no website, no phone number, no nothing in it, can actually rank, but without any context behind it. In other words, those contact points, etc. Then it's useless because basically there's no reason for anybody to try and find out any more information or click the call or click to a website if there is, especially if there is nothing there, right? No, but seriously, I mean, there's no context, so it is pretty useless even if it does rank. Of course, what's bad about it is it's holding down another profile. So there's that true. That's part is true. If it is built out, you are giving information, you're giving context, and you're giving somebody more of a reason to convert, basically, whether that be a call, website click, etc. And when you have no GBP, well, Google Business Profile, then of course you're definitely not going to rank because there's no entity for Google to show. Period.
Yeah. And so I think before we move on, when it comes to an optimized profile, what exactly does that mean? So what are the elements of a well-structured Google Business Profile, whether you have one location or 100, right? Each one is its own individual thing. What are some of the things that you should make sure to have?
Sure. I mean, obviously, you want your name, your address, your phone number, everything to be proper, right? You want your categories to be proper. You want to definitely go out and take a look at your competitors and the competitors in the area and see kind of what categories they're using and if any of those make sense. Most of the times, that's what I see is just somebody will have one category, but they'll be missing out on maybe 5 or 6 other possible good categories. So doing that competitive research is always a good idea. Another thing is definitely making sure that every single review is getting a reply. It's Christopher, that's right, exactly. Optimize your name that way. So but yeah, so believe it or not, you can put up to 700 characters inside of your title tag. Just saying.
Wow.
There's a reason for it. No, there's no reason for it. I'm completely joking. All right. So, but making sure every single review is read and replied to. I don't care if it's positive or if it's negative. Making sure you got a good cover photo, logo. I really don't care about doing logo. It's only the little tiny little thing on maps, so it's not that very important. Making sure that if somebody has a question about service area, so I'll just answer that really quickly. You only set up a service area basically if it's part of your business model, and it's really, really important that you have an outline on Google Maps. And what by really, really, really important, I mean that also service areas are one of the leading causes of suspensions of your Google Business Profile. So don't know why, because they don't impact ranking. So since they don't impact ranking, don't know why they're so sensitive, but they are extremely sensitive. So I say only put in the service area if you really, really need it. If you're a storefront, by the way. I mean, so in other words, you want to show a hybrid, which is your address and a service area. If you're just a service area company, of course, obviously you have no choice but to put in a service area, but just be careful with them. You can't be more than 2 hours from your verification address. Making sure that you basically, what I like to say is just fill out all of the things. So in other words, everything that's going to be under the edit tab, you just want to fill out everything. If there's a button for services, click it. Add services. Questions and answers, add your questions and answers. Just add and fill out everything. Fill it out slowly. Don't do it very fast. If you do it fast, again, you can get suspended. I say suspended a lot because we deal with hundreds of these a month. So we get to see them all the time, and we protect a lot of franchises from suspensions. So, but also making sure that you are uploading photos on a pretty regular basis. I like to say at least one a week if you can, at the very minimum. That's about it. I don't think I missed anything there, really, Justin.
Cool. So, in regards to reviews specifically, I see we got a couple of questions, about responding and things like that. Yeah, we got a lot of questions, but what are the costs of having a low number of reviews and a star rating versus, and what are the benefits of having a lot of reviews? Is there an algorithmic impact?
Sure.
In that sense?
So and I'm going to say no in quotes, even though I'm not putting up air quotes, we know that at 10 reviews and 100 reviews, there is a considerable ranking bump, basically. And beyond that, there's not been any kind of study actually done, so we can't really speak to that. So basically, after that, it's what I like to say is look at your competitors. If your closest competitor has 1,100 reviews, well, guess what? Your goal is to get 1,500. Period. The other thing is just a myth. Everybody's like, oh, I have this amazing 5-star reviews. Your rating is 5 stars. And so in that case, that's great for you. But the fact is that studies have shown that people trust 4.9. Actually, 4.8 is the sweet spot, but 4.9 and below, because nobody is perfect. And so a lower rating is actually, in that case, better. Obviously, you don't want like a 3.5. Nobody's going to trust a 3.5. So, and the last thing is kind of, we said this, is that making sure that you do reply to those reviews. I like to say, look at your own behavior to kind of understand, how people engage with the GBP, because yourself, if you're looking for a doctor or a dentist or a plumber, etc., you're going to go to Google, you're going to type in plumber near me or something like that. You're going to look at whoever has the best, rating, maybe not the 5.0. You're going to look at the reviews. You're going to sort it by negative reviews, recent reviews, latest reviews, etc. And you're going to make a decision based on that information. Obviously, if you see a horrible review and the owner writes back, "You're a slimy, I don't believe you said that about my son," he gets all defensive. Well, you're probably not going to want to do business with that company, right? But if you see something where it's a compassionate reply and seeing how they can help, then you might be like, you know what? Okay, they made a mistake, but at least they're going to try and fix it.
So we have a couple of questions here. I want to go back up to the question from Jennifer. She's just asking, how do I find or Google my own GBP? When I Google my company, it doesn't really come up. Is that, if you know that you have it set up under the Google account that you're using and you search my business, that's normally how you do it. And if you don't have it set up, you can still search my business and set it up through that Google account. Is that
no,
generally
my business, my
the
business is for the ones that it's for the profiles that you have basically in your account. But the answer to the question, though, actually, Justin, because she's just trying to figure out how she can find the location without
to
looking
see
at
her
search
own?
terms,
Okay.
is you put in the name of the Google business profile, usually your business name, and then you put in the zip code of the verification address or the city. If you do those two things, then the profile usually will just show up on the right-hand side. This is unless, there's always an it depends, unless it's a very generic name. Example, Steady Demand. That's my kind of name of my company. It's been around for 13 years. It took 8 years for Google to decide that we were actually an important entity and give us our own, knowledge panel. Before that, you type in Steady Demand and you come up with all sorts of stuff like, oil prices and things like that, which makes sense, right? But it's a generic name, so therefore it usually will not get a right-hand knowledge panel. Boom. And it worked for Jennifer, by the way. We have a testimonial.
Awesome. And so a follow-up from what you were saying earlier, what does it mean to fill it out slowly, like not filling out everything for your business profile at once?
So what that means is that if you get, let's say, you change your hours, and then you change your website, and then you change your description, and then you change the name of your company, and then you change the address, and you're doing all of these one by one by one by one. You're not pausing. So you're getting name, save, address, save, description, save. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't do all of those, but anyway, but when you're doing those and you're just hitting save and moving on, that is too fast, is what I mean. So in other words, you should make a change to say the name first and then wait, refresh. Once the edit has been taken, then you do your next edit. But you always wait basically until the edit's actually been taken.
Okay. And then we'll dig into Dustin's questions about responses and sentiment here in a couple slides. But there was one that I thought was really interesting. How do you build profiles from multiple doctors' office so that they're all on top of each other? I know that might be that's a common issue that I think happens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so there's so many different ways you can answer this question, but I'll just go with the simple way. I mean, realistically, what you would do is each doctor does have their own kind of practice that they're at, right? So you've got the practice and then you got the practitioner. Now, the confusing part to Google about doctors is that doctors do also go to multiple offices. They're usually not at the same one office every day of the week. So, we need to answer Sherry's question. That's an important one. Yeah. So basically, so you can just set up the practitioners. So if you have XYZ dental, then you could have Joe, whatever, DDS. You could have Justin DDS, Ben DDS. That's fine. You could set them all up. They are going to overlap each other, of course, on search, but in the doctors kind of category, really what's actually more important is that your GBP is actually more functioning like a business card than it is a ranking vehicle.
Awesome. And then for Sherry's question, as a local agency, how do I remove business profiles from my management without deleting their profiles?
Wonderful question. So why I say wonderful question and roll my eyes is because everybody gets this wrong, Sherry. Everybody. It's insane how many people actually damage profiles. But it's Google's fault, to be fair about this. I don't think this is people's fault in a way, because it does also depend. One thing I'm going to say globally about Google stuff is read their messaging with a fine-tooth comb. They sometimes have multiple people writing documentation, and so therefore sometimes it gets really hard to read and understand. And their emails are even worse. Sometimes it looks like somebody's just checking a bunch of boxes and it's a bunch of word salad. But so basically how do you do it is when you go into settings, it's going to have a link that says remove this business. When you click that, you just want to make sure that you don't want to go down this path is what I'm saying. So if you're going down the remove this business path, that is not the path that you need to go down. That means back up immediately, close everything, because you've just gone to the wrong place. Where you actually just need to go is to users. So you go to business settings, then you go to users, you click on your user, you click on the edit pencil, and then you remove yourself from the profile. So you don't want to remove the business profile, you just want to remove yourself. And that's actually how you do it. Otherwise, yes, you delete the profile.
Okay. Let's keep moving. We've got a ton of questions and we'll try to get to more at the end. But
there's a lot of good questions in here, though.
Really good questions. I think we might end up having to clip some of these as well, because there's some really great, you've been given some great answers. And I also have seen the questions about the photos as well when it comes to posting those on your business profile. And so we can talk about that here as well. But
all sorts of good.
And I think, we've kind of discussed these, so we can kind of cover these a little bit, a little bit lighter, and maybe, based on the questions we've been receiving, people have been putting in some of their challenges as well. But when it comes to, if you're managing 100, 200 locations, or even, 1 or to 5, what are some of the challenges when it comes to generating reviews and maintaining that information consistently and scaling your SEO efforts? Like, there's a lot here that could be really difficult. What are some of those challenges and maybe some of the mistakes that you've been seeing, businesses make?
Sure. I mean, it's pretty much, it's up here on the slide, right?
Yeah.
Generating reviews, of course, for every single location that you have. I mean, I had one customer who had a garage door company. They had 30 locations in one metro. The metro was very large, by the way. But, them being able to get an even number of reviews across all of their single locations, it was almost impossible. They had to choose, basically. We talked about, maintaining a narrative. Well, maintaining that your consistent information, of course, all across all your profiles, just like any listing management, you want to make sure everything is accurate. Scaling SEO is very difficult, especially even when it comes to local, and forget about it. If you want to scale LSA, you got to be really, really good to scale LSA. At least to scale LSA the right way. And I say that because 9 out of 10 profiles I look at it being managed the wrong way, actually. And people wonder why their LSAs are not performing well. And it usually comes down to the fact that there's a lot of unknown things about how some of the back-end features work. We talked about compliance. Compliance is a huge thing. I think there's only been one time that I've walked into a meeting with a new franchise and they've shown me their franchise network, and we've done an audit of their network, and they've all been in compliance. Usually it's about 30 to 40% of the network which are out of compliance, which are actually endangering the entire franchise network. So compliance with Google is huge. Franchisees, of course, never listen. So, and there's usually at the corporate level, there's usually not a lot of hard set rules, for instance, for naming conventions and things like that. So there's no penalty either, by the way. And, being able to generate location specific content, that's still a challenge, even though we have the wonderful things like ChatGPT and Perplexity and all these other tools, it's still a challenge. And we all know about the big problem, which is monitoring and responding to reviews at scale, right? That's always going to be an issue. So, you should always request reviews, come up with good ways to incentivize people to request reviews too, by the way, and different types of mechanics. I know I was in IHOP, and they have right on their table is a QR code that you can scan to go leave a review. That's perfect, right at the point. So you should definitely be doing that. Things like that.
Yeah, we can jump right into this slide. You're starting with the requesting a review.
Yeah.
With the requesting a review, side of it, one of the things that we've seen on the Birdeye side is a lot of the reviews that you get from people who are, I guess, that's not unprompted, or if they do it under their own willpower or their own volition, it's normally people who are very emotionally charged up and they're trying to vent or, have their voice be heard. And those tend to be the negative ones. But, if you run a good business and you provide a great service, more often than not, you're going to have customers who are really happy with your service, but it's not something that they think, oh, you know what, this was so great, I should just leave a Google review for them. It's just not a natural thing that people think about. So by simply just making sure that you request a review, and then you also make it easy for them to leave it, so you don't have them jump through hoops and log into 5 different things. You can send them a link or a QR code, and it goes directly to the review space. It makes it a lot easier. It really impacts the number of reviews that you receive. It's more than anything, it's a numbers game. So the more people you ask, the higher chances you have of receiving a review, and more likely from people who are happy with your business and with your services. But what about with the responses to reviews, Ben? We had a couple of questions about the timing of how quickly you should try to respond to reviews. What about, responding to negative reviews?
I think every single negative review should be responded to. I think every single negative review should be encouraged to reach out to customer support or whatever kind of mechanisms that you have to resolve the issue. And I think every single negative review should be replied to in such a way that it's not actually for the person who left the review, because they're already pissed. They already made up their decision. They made their decision on what they think about your company, and the only thing you're going to do is actually piss them off just a little bit more. At least that's what people think. But the fact is that when you leave these replies, leave it for me, leave it for Justin, leave it for Melissa, somebody who's going to be coming in behind basically that user and reading that reply, because that's all I care about is how you reply. The context of the review, I don't buy it, not 100% of the time. There's usually a lot of bias in those negative reviews for whatever reason. And again, you're dealing with somebody who's very impassioned and angry at the moment. So it's like, whatever, and they don't update the review, by the way, even if you made it better. So, but I'm going to read how you respond, because that tells me a ton. It tells me how you are going to behave if I have a bad experience. And that's what I want to know. How are you going to behave then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The amount of times I've looked at a business and then sorted it by low reviews to see, like, okay, if I go here, what's the worst I can expect? And then when you can see that, how the business responds, because, I mean, like you were saying, a perfect 5.0 rating is a little suspect. Everybody has a bad day. People are human. But seeing that response can definitely change my mind as a consumer. I think, again, kind of like what you were saying earlier, like, think of your own search behavior. What do you do when you read a review? what goes through your mind when you're seeing a negative review or you see a response. That's it's one of those things you just have to continually put yourself in your customer's shoes, or think about yourself as a customer from, for other businesses.
Yeah.
Ben, we've had a few questions about the timing.
Questions.
I know. Yeah, I know we're getting close to the time. It looks like we have like 7 or 8 minutes left.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, if we have a couple extra minutes, maybe we can get to some, but I know we have a couple of things we wanted to get to. But one of the questions I did want to hit was about the backing up and the screenshots of your reviews. And this goes back to that active filter and, maybe with the losing reviews. What are some of the ways that you've seen, as an effective way to keep that stuff safe?
Yeah, so we were talking about this yesterday when we were in the green room and preparing, and that is that when you have these kinds of issues where reviews are going missing, or a review from somebody is not showing up on your Google Business Profile, the only thing that you can do, and this is so antiquated, by the way, I have no idea why they do this. The only thing you can do is provide them a screenshot of the review with the reviewer's name, of course, and also or a screenshot of their email that you got saying that you got this new review. What's better is if you actually have a link to a review, by the way, of course, if it's an old review, but basically making sure that you have this information. And the reason why is because if you're going to reach out to support, or if somebody's going to try and help you get those reviews back, you have to have evidence, you have to have proof. And unfortunately, sorry, I'm going to have to say this, Justin, but unfortunately, a web-based backup of your reviews from a third party, Google will not take. They do not rely on third-party data when it comes to something like that. You actually have to have it yourself. Like for instance, we back it up in a very specific way because we know how Google needs it. But grabbing the name, a link to their profile, things like that, screenshots of these reviews, nobody that I know does this until they meet with us and they say, I lost, 50% of my reviews. What do I do? Oh, well, you can't do anything now, but you can do this to protect yourself in the future. And then they start doing it, basically. So be proactive about that. Protect yourself.
Awesome. So, one of the things is like, when you have a lot of this stuff is, it's great. Being able to request a review from every customer is a lot easier said than done. Responding to every review is a lot easier said than done. As you get more locations, the complexity of this just scales, right? And it just gets harder and harder.
Of course.
And, it's 2024. We're in the age of AI. We have the ability to, technology has allowed people to manage this stuff in a lot easier way. And that's something that Birdeye does really, really well. Specifically when it comes to your entire online reputation, really, not even just with Google, but when it comes to, we'll go to this slide. This one's a little bit better. But when it comes to your entire online reputation, from social media, your reviews across 200 different websites, communicating through email or text, Birdeye pretty much covers everything that you need, no matter how many locations you have. You can send automated review requests, and it connects with your CRM, so you can have all of that stuff be completely automated, so that you can time out your request right after a transaction or whenever that timing would be good. You can track reviews from over 200 websites. You can use AI to quickly summarize those reviews. You can base it by location, by region, and you can get a much more in-depth analysis of what your customers are saying and how they feel about your business, all in real time. When it comes to managing those listings, if you have 200 business profiles that you're trying to keep up with, you can update that information from one place and make it super easy to ensure that it's accurate and that it's all managed in one place. It's really, really cool. Dustin says he uses the sentiment analysis in Birdeye all the time. And, that's just, that's one aspect of it. And I love that because it does make it a lot easier to really just get a better sense of what's going on with what your customers are saying. And another aspect of this is also the competitor side. You can automatically identify your competitors by your industry and location. You can compare your sentiment against theirs and their reputation metrics from yours against theirs. You can even, get a SWOT analysis of your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats from you against your competitors. It even does it even analyzes the social media sentiment and analysis of you and your competitors, which is pretty insane. There's a lot that it handles, and what's really cool is that it makes it a lot easier. And it actually makes it a lot easier the more locations you have, because it doesn't really matter how many locations you have. You could have 500 locations and you can manage it all from one platform. It makes it, much more consistent from location to location. You can respond to all of your reviews either manually or with AI in a much more human-like way. We had a question earlier about the personalized responses and asking if that provides a better sentiment. And I think that goes back to what we were just talking about with responses, is that, it's more for the people who are reading those reviews more than the direct person. And a lot of times, if you have that personalized response, there's a good chance that that review could be reversed. So there's a lot that it can do. And, I don't know, this is just a really cool tool. Like, I haven't seen many other things, especially on the competitor and the insights tools that we just came out with. I haven't really seen anybody else able to do it quite like how we're doing it. So I definitely recommend giving it a look and learning more about it. But it's pretty wicked how awesome it is. But before we jump off, and maybe, if we have time for a couple more questions, then I wanted to get your thoughts for the future. So next year in 2025, we talked about the Perplexity and ChatGPT search is coming up. We've got, AI is, it seems like it's advancing and it's getting more and more intelligent every day. But what are your predictions for 2025, either in the Google landscape or the online search landscape for businesses, or just in general? What do you think?
I mean, so GBP, of course, always is going to change. They're going to add new features. We talked about some things, about that today, right? Yes, Dustin, we're talking about that. But right now, I think the biggest thing I could say about next year is that Google is going to have competition, period. Search GPT, Perplexity. There will be other players that are coming out, by the way. This is not going to stop. We've seen this bubble before, basically. And, when I say, I'm just saying technology bubbles, disruption bubbles, we've seen it before. And so we kind of know how this is going to go. We're going to have this kind of whole explosion. We're going to have the miners. We're going to have the people who are buying the tools, right? Then we're going to have a bunch of different tools pop up. That was what kind of this year and last year was all about. Next year is probably going to all be about consolidation, the start of consolidation, right? And the start of companies buying each other left and right. But I think obviously OpenAI, Search GPT is huge, right? Perplexity has made a name for itself. You has kind of gotten lost on the shuffle on all of this. But we know that one thing that is going to be true, and that is that people do want one answer, and Google's not getting it right, or at least not right enough. And there's enough stigma and enough people want to go away from Google that it's giving opportunity for these other people to take market share. That being said, if you've seen some of the recent case studies, I think Rand Fishkin just put one out that was kind of a guest study. And, it shows that the market share that's been taken away from Google is very small so far, a couple percentage points. But hey, it's still a couple percentage points in a very short period of time. Conversational AI, I think, is the next really big thing. And I don't think right now it's just conversational through through voice. But video, I think, is where things are going to get really disruptive next year. Not only the creation of video, but just these AI, we say AI agents later in the real sense, but, being able to have like a video conversation with Siri, quote unquote, right? Not for lack of better terms. And being able to have this real-time conversation with your own personal Jarvis, basically, from Iron Man. That, I think, is it's closer than we all, I think, expect. with how fast everything is kind of going. And then, we talked a little bit about wearables. The wearables are just amazing, really, at this point. And yeah, I did that too, by the way, at the Sphere. It's pretty interesting. So, but wearables, I think, is the real thing. It's like I got myself a pair of those Ray-Ban glasses, right? I had to check out the Meta AI. I personally hate Meta AI. But now Samsung is making a pair of glasses, right? And then you've got, Meta and Samsung are both working on AR versions of those glasses. And so is Google, and so is Apple, So the next thing I think is going to be is those types of wearables. And then I think eventually, wearables kind of like that you see in Minority Report, that's way in the future, but I think next year, some kind of wearables and starting to think about how to optimize for those things. And then we talked about the rise of the AI agents, in the green room.
This is the scary one.
yeah. This is the one that I'm just not on board with at all, man. I do not like the idea of any third-party computer system getting control of my phone or my desktop. It's like they say that you should never give anybody access to your desktop, or your phone. And if you get scammed or if you start losing money, all of a sudden the bank asks you, did anybody have access to your computer? Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, ChatGPT or Gemini did. Anyway,
Yeah.
I really don't like the idea of giving my control of my life or my computer systems or my phone to a LLM or what might become something even more advanced. But that is coming here. It is here, actually. I think they're releasing it with Gemini in December. And I know Perplexity is working on one. Of course, ChatGPT has one. So people are going to use it. Young kids are going to use it, of course, right? So it is going to be useful. And it is probably going to put a lot of people out of work. Just to put it bluntly, if you can have an assistant do everything for you, why would you need to hire a virtual assistant anymore? And I think it all come down to how much privacy you want to sacrifice.
Yeah. It's an exciting time that we're in. We've got, it's as equally as exciting. It's also, there's always concerns with safety and things like that. And, you really just want to make sure that you can approach it the best way that you can. And, that doesn't necessarily mean you use the agents as they come out. Maybe you let other people be the beta testers, right? And you kind of let them take care of it. I am excited about the wearables and the conversational AI, especially with I use the ChatGPT advanced voice all the time. It's just an easy thing to converse with. Excited to see what that multi-modality aspect of it, where you can actually converse with something and then actually be working on it together without giving it control, but at least, going back and forth with it. And yeah, Dustin, an AI agent would be useful, but only as an additive tool and not a replacement. And I think that's the big thing with AI in general, is to consistently look at it as a tool. Even if you're a great writer and you use ChatGPT, you still have to be a good writer to know that what ChatGPT is spitting out is either good or bad. Because if you're a bad writer and it gives you like a bad email copy, for example, then how do you know what I mean? You still have to be good at what you do in order to use the tools effectively. You can give a 10-year-old a chisel and a hammer, but he can't make a chair. But you can give an expert craftsman that and he can make something beautiful. And so, it's a tool and not a replacement. But thank you so much, Ben, for joining us today. I think this is the most active chat sections that we've ever had. We have so many great questions, and I know we weren't able to get to all of them. We'll after this, we get done here in a second, I'll pull all of these things and make sure that if we missed any questions, we'll reach out and provide an answer. But I saw that there was a request for a part 2, which I think is definitely in order. We've got high demand in this kind of conversations. I think this was a great discussion. But if you do want to make sure that you don't miss any of these other, webinars that we have coming up, be sure to follow us on LinkedIn. That's where we post all of our promotions and things like that. And I do know it's not active on our website yet, but we are going to have a webinar with, it'll be with Steve Wiedemann, who's one of our friends, Ben, next month. And we're going to be talking about how to prepare your local SEO for 2025. So we're going to get more into that side of it, understanding, what you can do to prepare. I feel like 2025 is going to bring a lot of challenges that we don't even know about. But, how do you...
It's kind of like that every year, though. Come on.
Yeah, that's true. And it feels like it's getting more and more unknown. But I do think that there are some things that you can do to at least prepare and set yourself up for success in the best way you can right now. And at least allow yourself to be flexible for any crazy changes. But thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in and sticking with us. I know we're going a little long on time. I think we just had so many great questions. But again, be sure to check out those related resources and follow us on LinkedIn. Connect with Ben on LinkedIn as well. And thank you guys. We'll see you guys soon. And obviously, if you want to go back and listen to this, the recording should be ready in a few hours, and you'll also get a link tomorrow. But thanks, and we'll see you guys soon.